The sky lied to humanity for almost a century. That is how the story truly begins. For generations, people believed the stars were empty, silent, harmless. Children still learned constellations in school. Old men still told stories about alien invasions as jokes. Humanity had spread through the solar system, but never beyond. Mars had cities. The moon had factories. Space was busy, loud, and human, but still lonely. Then the sky told the truth. It happened in a single second. Every satellite in Earth's orbit screamed at once. Sensors failed. Telescopes went blind. The sun dimmed, not because it was dying, but because something vast moved between it and the planet. Across the world, shadows stretched where shadows should not exist. People looked up. And the stars were gone. Massive shapes filled the sky, too large to understand, too dark to measure. They did not arrive with explosions or flashes of light. They simply were, hanging above Earth like judgment waiting to speak. The aliens did not attack at first. They waited. That silence was worse than any weapon. 3 hours later, the message came. It was not spoken by one voice, but many, layered together, translated perfectly into every human language at once. Calm. Cold. Certain. Human civilization has been evaluated. Resistance probability is irrelevant. Your world is now under Dominion custodianship. Obedience ensures survival. There was no threat in their tone. Only fact. Governments responded with panic. Militaries scrambled. Old defense plans, designed for wars between humans, were activated out of habit, not hope. Missiles launched. Railguns fired. Fleets rose. None of it mattered. The alien ships absorbed everything. Energy vanished into invisible fields. Nuclear warheads stopped mid-flight, frozen like insects in amber before falling harmlessly into the ocean. Humanity's greatest weapons were not defeated, they were ignored. Within 48 hours, Earth surrendered. Cities were left standing. Oceans were untouched. The Dominion did not come to destroy humanity. They came to use it. 50 years passed under quiet occupation. Humans worked. Humans lived. Humans obeyed. The Dominion ruled with efficiency, not cruelty. They took resources, labor, data. They reorganized human society into clean, controlled systems. People still married. Children were still born. Life continued, smaller, dimmer, slower. The Dominion believed that was enough. They never understood humans. Because humans do not stop dreaming just because they are defeated. Far from Earth, beyond Neptune, where sunlight barely touched the dark, something ancient waited. Humanity had found it long before the invasion. The discovery was classified beyond secrecy. Not even governments spoke of it aloud. It was known only by a handful of scientists, engineers, and explorers who understood immediately what it meant. They called it the Shadow Gate. It was not a ship. Not a weapon. Not a machine in the human sense. It was a wound in reality. A colossal ring of unknown matter, older than Earth itself, drifting in a space that behaved incorrectly. Sensors could barely detect it. Light bent around it. Time inside it moved. Strangely. The Shadow Gate did not open into another place. It opened into elsewhere. A folded layer of existence where space could be hidden, stretched, shaped. A place where something could exist without being seen. Humanity could not activate it at first. But they could study it. Learn from it. And they did, quietly, desperately, until the Dominion arrived and erased every official record. But knowledge does not vanish just because files are deleted. Some scientists disappeared instead of surrendering. Some engineers sabotaged systems before joining labor programs. Some soldiers died on paper but lived in shadows. They found each other. They formed something small, fragile, and dangerous. They called it the Continuum. The Continuum did not fight. They waited. For decades, they worked beneath oceans, under ice, inside mountains. They used stolen Dominion tools and human creativity to solve problems the aliens never thought existed. They learned how to open tiny cracks into the folded space of the shadow gate, small enough to hide, large enough to build. They built where the Dominion could not see. They built where physics could not complain. They built ships. Not fast. Not many. But real. Children grew up inside hidden stations, learning history their rulers tried to erase. Engineers taught math using broken machines. Old soldiers trained new ones using memories instead of weapons. Hope became a discipline. Patience became a weapon. The Dominion never noticed. Why would they? To them, humanity was finished. On the 50th anniversary of Earth's surrender, Dominion Overseer Carex reviewed planetary output reports. Productivity was stable. Compliance was high. Rebellion risk was listed as statistically insignificant. He approved resource expansions. That same hour, deep inside a shadow-folded dock that did not officially exist, a human woman named Commander Ilara Miles stood on the bridge of a vessel humanity was never supposed to have. It was not beautiful. It was powerful. The ship's name was Resolve. And it was only the beginning. Far beyond Neptune, ancient systems awakened for the first time in billions of years. The Shadow Gate felt human hands on its mechanisms. And for the first time since the Dominion conquered the stars, the universe began to underestimate humanity again. The Dominion believed silence meant obedience. For 50 years, Earth had been quiet. No riots large enough to matter. No revolutions worth recording. No signals sent beyond permitted channels. Human resistance existed only as small disturbances, easily corrected, quickly forgotten. That belief was the Dominion's greatest mistake. Because silence, for humans, was never surrender. It was preparation. Commander Ilara Miles stood motionless as the final systems check scrolled across the main display aboard Resolve. Around her, officers barely old enough to remember freedom worked with calm precision. They spoke softly. They did not celebrate. No one smiled. This was not victory yet. This was exposure. Shadow stability holding, reported a young engineer. Fold pressure within tolerance. Ilara nodded. Begin partial phase. The stars outside the viewport shifted. Not moved, slid. Space peeled back like a thin curtain, revealing the shadow layer beneath reality. Colors that had no names rippled across the hull. The ship did not accelerate. It did not jump. It emerged. And somewhere far away, Dominion sensors failed to notice. That was the point. The Continuum had learned something crucial over decades of study. Dominion technology was powerful, but rigid. It relied on rules. On predictable physics. On a universe that behaved properly. Humans did not. Human engineers had stopped asking what should work and focused on what could work. They didn't overpower Dominion systems. They avoided them. Slipped between assumptions. Built weapons that didn't trigger alarms because the alarms didn't understand what they were sensing. The fleet was never meant to fight the Dominion head-on. Not at first. It was meant to confuse them. On Earth's surface, life continued as usual, until it didn't. In cities across the planet, Dominion command nodes began receiving impossible data. Power fluctuations with no source. Communication delays measured in fractions of seconds, but consistent. Supply drones arriving early, then late, then not at all. Small errors. The kind administrators blamed on software aging. Then gravity hiccuped. In one industrial zone, workers watched as a Dominion cargo platform suddenly weighed half as much. It slammed into its restraints, tore free, and floated upward before crashing back down moments later. No alarms followed. No explanation came. The Continuum was testing limits. Every anomaly was deliberate. Measured. Controlled. Each one taught them more about how Dominion systems responded to stress they did not recognize as danger. Ilara watched the reports arrive aboard Resolve. Her voice stayed calm, but her hands clenched behind her back. Escalate pattern, she said quietly. Across the shadow layer, other ships answered. Quietly. The Dominion Overseer Carex noticed the pattern 6 days later. At first, he dismissed it as coincidence. then as inefficiency, then as an error in planetary management. Then a listening post near Jupiter vanished. Not destroyed. Vanished. Sensors reported it as present, operational, transmitting normal data. But supply ships passed through empty space. Visual confirmation showed nothing at the coordinates. The post existed in reports only. Carex felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest cavity. Confusion. He ordered a full diagnostic of Earth's monitoring network. The response came back clean. Too clean. That night, for the first time in 50 years, a Dominion ship disappeared over Earth. Witnesses saw it ripple, blur, and simply slide out of reality. No explosion. No debris. Just absence. The humans working beneath it said nothing. They went home quietly. Far below Antarctica's ice, Ilara watched the footage and exhaled slowly. "They'll react now," said her tactical officer. "Yes," Ilara replied. "That's the idea." The Dominion reacted the only way they knew how. With force. Reinforcement fleets were diverted toward Earth. Patrol density increased. Human population centers were placed under stricter observation. Punitive measures were authorized for suspected coordination anomalies. Thousands of humans were detained. And thousands more vanished from Dominion records. Sleeper cells activated across the planet, not to fight, but to move. People disappeared from work camps overnight. Transit routes failed. Entire populations relocated into spaces the Dominion could no longer track. The Shadow Gate allowed something extraordinary. It allowed migration without detection. Humanity was slipping through the cracks of the universe itself. Carex addressed the Dominion High Council with controlled urgency. "Human irregularities exceed acceptable thresholds," he reported. "Recommend planetary pacification protocols." The Council hesitated. Earth was valuable, productive, intact. Pacification meant damage. "We will authorize limited enforcement," the Council replied. "Do not overcommit." Carex obeyed. And underestimated again. The first Dominion enforcement strike never reached its target. As the ships descended toward a suspected resistance zone, space bent around them. Sensors screamed. Formation integrity failed. 3 vessels emerged inside a mountain. 2 fused into each other. 1 never reappeared. The Dominion called it impossible. Humans called it learning. Aboard Resolve, Ilara watched casualty estimates rise on the enemy side for the first time in half a century. But she did not celebrate. "Status of the gate?" she asked. "Primary activation still unstable," came the answer. "Full opening would expose us." Ilara nodded. "Then we wait." Waiting had always been humanity's strength. The Dominion now knew something was wrong, but not what. Not how. Not how deep it went. And far beyond Neptune, the Shadow Gate pulsed brighter with every controlled breach. Ancient mechanisms adjusted. Pathways widened. Space remembered how to open. The quiet weapon was not the fleet. It was uncertainty. And for the first time in its long history, the Dominion was afraid of something it could not measure. When Carex looked up at Earth's sky that night, he saw nothing unusual. That terrified him. Because deep in the shadows between stars, humanity was no longer hiding. It was positioning. And soon, there would be no more silence. Fear did not arrive loudly. It arrived in reports. Dominion analysts across Earth and the inner system began noticing something deeply wrong, not in battle data, but in absence. Ships vanished without alarms. Stations reported normal function while crews failed to respond. Sensors contradicted each other, each insisting it was correct. The Dominion had faced rebellions before. They had never faced uncertainty. Overseer Carex spent long cycles reviewing projections that refused to stabilize. Every model assumed human behavior would collapse under pressure. Every model failed. Humans do not act correctly, one strategist admitted. Carex did not disagree. On Earth, people whispered again. Not openly, not loudly, but whispers spread faster than orders. Workers noticed patrol routes changing. Overseers looked nervous. Dominion enforcement units lingered longer than before. For the first time in 50 years, the rulers were watching the ruled. That alone was a victory. In the shadow layer, the human fleet grew bolder. Ships phased closer to Earth's orbit. Smaller vessels tested precision jumps, appearing for seconds, scanning, vanishing before detection could complete. Each movement taught the Continuum more about the limits of folded space. Commander Ilara Miles watched it all with careful restraint. "We are not here to frighten them," she reminded her officers. "Fear makes enemies cautious. Confusion makes them slow." The Continuum's goal was not revenge. It was control of the battlefield before the battle existed. Deep beneath the ruins of an old European city, a human engineer named Thomas Hale adjusted a device no Dominion scanner could read. He had never held a weapon in his life. He had built power grids before the invasion. Now he bent reality. "Phase anchor stable," he reported softly. Above him, a Dominion command relay flickered. Then failed. Across Earth, command latency spiked. Dominion units began operating seconds behind real time. Orders arrived late. Responses overlapped. Coordination fractured. The Dominion compensated by centralizing control. That was exactly what the humans wanted. Central systems were easier to isolate, easier to mislead, easier to trap. Carex finally ordered a full planetary lockdown. No human movement without escort. No unscheduled transport. No deviation tolerated. The order arrived too late. By then, millions of humans had already vanished into shadow-mapped corridors, temporary folds that allowed entire communities to relocate unseen. Children, elders, specialists, gone. Earth was becoming a shell. The Dominion still occupied cities, but they no longer owned the people inside them. Aboard Resolve, alarms sounded, not of danger, but of readiness. "Shadow gate synchronization at 40%, reported navigation. "Secondary corridors stable." Ilara closed her eyes for a moment. Humanity had waited decades. The gate had waited eons. Both were waking up together. The Dominion High Council convened in emergency session. This was unheard of. Earth was supposed to be solved. "We are facing an unknown technological divergence," one counselor said. "Human capability exceeds prior estimates." "Impossible," another replied. "They were never spacefaring beyond primitive methods." "They are not using space," a third corrected. "They are using around it." Silence followed. Carex transmitted his assessment with unusual honesty. "They are not rebelling," he said. "They are preparing." That word unsettled the council. Preparation implied intent. Intent implied strategy. Strategy implied equality. Authorization came moments later. The Dominion would deploy its oldest rule: overwhelming force. A full battle group, 300 warships, was ordered from Mars toward Earth. Not to patrol. Not to intimidate. To end the problem. When the fleet entered acceleration, humans noticed immediately. Shadow sensors lit up with energy trails that could not be hidden. "They're coming," said Ilara. "Yes," Ilara replied. "They always do." She turned to the Shadow Gate operations officer. "Begin alignment," she said. The officer hesitated. "Partial opening only." Ilara looked at the distant stars, her expression steady. "No," she said. "They need to see this." Far beyond Neptune, the Shadow Gate began to open. Not fully. Just enough. Reality stretched. Space groaned. Ancient systems activated pathways that had not been used since before life on Earth existed. Inside the shadow layer, thousands of human ships waited. Not rushing. Not cheering. Waiting. When the Dominion fleet reached the outer edge of Earth's system, their sensors finally detected something impossible. A mass reading larger than any known formation. Not approaching. Already there. The first Dominion commander to see the data assumed error. The second ordered recalibration. The third felt fear. Space folded open in front of them. And humanity stepped out of the dark. The Dominion fleet slowed. That alone was unthinkable. For thousands of years, Dominion war doctrine relied on momentum. Strike fast, strike hard, overwhelm before resistance could adapt. Their ships were built for certainty, for known physics, for enemies who followed the same rules. But the space ahead of them did not follow rules anymore. It bent. It breathed. It opened. Dominion sensors flooded command decks with impossible readings. Mass signatures appeared where space had been empty seconds before. Energy patterns formed shapes no algorithm could classify. Gravity twisted sideways, pulling instruments out of alignment. Then the shadows split. Human ships emerged without sound, without flame, without warning. They did not jump. They unfolded. Thousands of vessels slid into normal space as if reality had made room for them. Dreadnoughts larger than Dominion carriers. Sleek cruisers that moved before targeting systems could lock. Support ships humming with unfamiliar energy, stabilizing the breach like stitches holding torn space together. For the first time in its history, the Dominion fleet was outnumbered. Commander Ilara Miles stood on the Bridge of Resolve, her posture straight despite the chaos unfolding beyond the viewport. "Open broadcast," she said calmly. The signal went out on every known Dominion frequency, and several they did not know existed. This time, she did not threaten. She explained. "For 50 years, you believed we were broken," Ilara said. "You believed silence meant obedience. You believed power meant control." Her image appeared across Dominion command decks, an old human woman, unarmed, unafraid. "You were wrong," she continued. "We did not fight you because fighting you would have destroyed our home. So we learned. We adapted. We hid where you never thought to look." Dominion commanders shouted over one another, issuing overlapping orders. Formations broke as ships attempted to realign in warped space. Ilara watched the confusion spread. "Humans are not strongest when they are loud," she said. "We are strongest when we are patient." The first shot of the war was not a weapon. It was a signal. Human support ships activated phase dampeners across the battlefield. Dominion targeting systems lagged. Shields failed to synchronize. Energy weapons misfired, not because they were disabled, but because space refused to behave consistently. Then the second phase began. Human ships did not fire wildly. They struck precisely. One Dominion cruiser lost power as its reactor was folded half a meter out of alignment with itself. Another vanished into a microfold, reappearing kilometers away, inside its own formation. Panic spread. Dominion captains had never fought an enemy that refused to meet them on the same plane of reality. They adapted quickly, but not quickly enough. On Earth, humans watched the sky change. The stars rippled. Light curved. Shapes moved where nothing had moved before. Dominion patrol ships fell from the sky like wounded animals, crashing harmlessly into oceans or deserts, disabled, not destroyed. Humanity was not seeking annihilation. It was seeking freedom. Carex watched the battle from his command tower, his many eyes reflecting the impossible display above Earth. His species had ruled the stars for millennia. Now he understood something fundamental. The Dominion had never conquered humanity. They had merely occupied its surface. "They built this under us," he whispered. The realization struck deeper than fear. It was humiliation. A Dominion battleship attempted to fire on Resolve. The shot never landed. Space folded around the beam, bending it away like water around a stone. Ilara did not flinch. "Hold fire," she ordered. Her officers looked at her in disbelief. "They are retreating," the tactical officer said. Indeed, Dominion formations were breaking apart. Ships pulled away, engines burning hard as they attempted to escape folded space that refused to let them leave cleanly. Ilara knew the moment mattered. End it now, and the Dominion would return stronger. Let it go, and they would remember this lesson forever. She opened a final channel. "Leave Earth," she said simply. "Withdraw your forces. End the occupation." Carex hesitated. Defeat was unthinkable. But extinction was worse. He gave the order. Dominion ships disengaged, limping toward safe space, their once perfect formations shattered. The shadows closed behind them. The battlefield went silent. Above Earth, human ships remained, watching, waiting, guarding. For the first time in 50 years, the sky belonged to humanity again. But Ilara did not smile. "This is not the end," she said quietly. "This is the beginning." Because now the galaxy knew. And the Shadow Gate had been opened. The galaxy listened. It had no choice. News traveled fast through Dominion space, faster than fleets, faster than politics. Stories moved through trade routes and data relays, whispered by merchants and recorded by observers who had never believed such a thing possible. Earth had broken free. Not through annihilation. Not through brute force. But through patience. Across 100 systems, older civilizations re-examined ancient assumptions. The Dominion had always been unstoppable. Their rule was considered permanent, inevitable. Entire cultures had surrendered without firing a shot because resistance meant extinction. Now that belief cracked. Because humanity had done something no one else ever had. They had waited. Above Earth, the human fleet held position for days. Ships rotated in slow, deliberate patterns, not aggressive, not triumphant. They were not there to threaten. They were there to be seen. On the surface, cities changed overnight. Dominion structures powered down. Overseer towers went dark. Human communication networks, long suppressed, came alive with voices that had not spoken freely in half a century. Families reunited. Children saw the sky without fear for the first time. Commander Ilara Miles watched the planet from orbit, her reflection faint against the glass. Her body was tired. Her hands trembled when she let herself rest. She had given everything to this moment. But she was not finished. "We've received transmissions," her communications officer said. "Non-Dominion origin. Multiple systems." Ilara turned slowly. "Put them through." The first message came from a species humanity had never met. Thin voices, cautious, hopeful. "We saw what you did," the message said. "We did not know it was possible." Another followed. "If the Dominion can bleed, they can be resisted." A third was simpler. "How did you survive?" Ilara closed her eyes. How did humanity survive? Not with stronger weapons. Not with superior numbers. But with stubborn curiosity. With creativity born from desperation. With the refusal to accept that the present was permanent. She recorded a single response and sent it across every open channel. "We remembered who we were," she said. "And we refused to disappear." The Dominion High Council met in silence. Their fleets were intact, but their authority was damaged beyond repair. Worlds that had never questioned them now watched Earth closely. Occupied systems began to resist in small ways. Trade slowed. Compliance weakened. The Dominion had lost something far more valuable than ships. They had lost inevitability. Far beyond Neptune, the Shadow Gate stabilized into a permanent structure under human control. It no longer felt ancient and hostile. It felt awake. Human scientists studied it openly now. Not as a weapon, but as a bridge. A way to hide, yes, but also a way to reach. The continuum dissolved quietly. It was no longer needed. Humanity stepped into the light again, not as conquerors, but as equals. Ilara stood one last time on the bridge of resolve. Young officers surrounded her, people who had grown up in shadows and would now live in stars. "You did well," she told them. "Better than we ever hoped." When she passed away weeks later, Earth mourned her as a symbol, not of war, but of endurance. The galaxy remembered her differently. As the moment the rules changed. Because humanity had proven something the universe could never forget. You do not need to be the strongest to win. You only need to be the one who learns, and waits, and refuses to give up. And somewhere beyond the stars, new civilizations began to wonder. If humans could do this, what else might they become?